Welcome in to the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I'm Steven Serda of Arrowhead Pride, of course. Very happy to be joined by my guy, Rocky Magana. Rocky, it was concerning at times in this one, to put it lightly. That first half was a little ugly. Everything went the Cleveland Browns way, right? In the first half, everything went the way that you need, that the Browns needed things to unfold. It was happening in the first half. They played a perfect first half, offensively, defensively. Kevin Stefanski called a perfect game. It was just everything was going their way. And even into the second half, there was some struggles and some concern as we were getting late into this football game. And then, Rocky, what happened? Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes happened again. And so even for all of the negativity that you were feeling and their poor play in the first half, the ultimate eraser, Patrick Mahomes, comes in, lobs an absolutely insane throw to Tyreek Hill for a 75-yard touchdown that completely changed the game. It completely changed everything for the Cleveland Browns, and then things just started kind of unraveling. That's a fun game. That's a fun week one game for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know how else to put it. Just as a general football fan, there's no way you watch that game and didn't love every minute of it. Patrick Mahomes is just absolutely insane. like what else is there to say about that dude at this point?
I mean, they didn't make it easy on you, right? Like your blood pressure was never low during that entire game. But you're right. It's why they call him the great eraser. Is that when you got a heavyweight champ like Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, he's never going to stop swinging. And the Chiefs are always going to go down swinging. And if they connect on a couple of shots, then you're on the floor before you know it. And it's an entirely different game. I mean, when you look at the defense, the first three quarters and the fourth quarter are a tale of two totally different tapes. It's like they didn't even show up until the fourth quarter. They were getting pushed off the ball nonstop in the first three quarters. And then, I mean, I think you really saw today that we missed Willie Gay. I mean, his athleticism on the field. Nick Bolton, I think, for being a rookie and for being asked to step into that role, I mean, he really did step up, and he had some nice plays, but he also had some rookie moments, right? And I think you just see that he is a great player, but the athleticism that Gay brings to the table is just a whole other level, right? And we don't have anybody else who can replace that.
Yeah, and we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter on all of our Arrowhead Pride channels. I see all your guys' comments rolling in. Keep them coming in. We'll address it at some point throughout the show. If you guys got some questions you're curious about and you want to hear our opinion, we'd be happy to answer those. We'll get to those at some point throughout the show. And yeah, I want to get to the defense here in a little bit, Rocky, but we got to ride this thing out for a few more minutes with the Chiefs fans before we start breaking down the things that nobody wants to talk about, the things that we should probably overlook because they won, and they won in impressive fashion late in the game because Patrick Mahomes is just the best football player on the planet. And Tyreek Hill was absolutely insane today. Travis Kelce was insane today. Like, their playmakers just showed up. The defense struggled, but Chris Jones had 2 sacks, and he was a force late in the game when Patrick Mahomes connected to Tyreek Hill for that 75-yard touchdown. Then the immediate following series, the Chiefs defense finally looked energized, finally looked like they were making a turn in the game. And I tweeted it out. It was the first time all game that I felt like their defense looked energized and they looked like, okay, we're coming out to end this thing and push this team off the football. And then Chris Jones immediately follows it up with the sack on the next series. It's just what you expect from this team at this point. Like, it's hard to say anything else because they do it over and over and over again. I likened that 75-yard touchdown pass from Mahomes to one that he had to Tyreek Hill a couple years ago. I believe it was in 2018 against the Baltimore Ravens, where they wound up forcing overtime because of that throw where Patrick Mahomes was running across the field and just heaved it across his body, but with precision, accuracy that just completely defies physics. It just didn't make sense then, and it still didn't make sense today. Like, I know there's a lot of guys out there in the NFL with strong arms. There's a lot of guys who can make impressive throws, but Patrick Mahomes was insane in that moment. And it completely turned the game around. A game where the Browns, everything was falling into place. The Browns played a perfect game. The Browns showed up. And I was saying all week long that even if the Browns found a way to win this game, it doesn't matter as much for the Chiefs as it matters for the Cleveland Browns, because they're supposed to be a Super Bowl caliber team this year, right? They're supposed to be that second best team in the AFC. And a lot of people are picking them as a Super Bowl team. They're one of the most talented football teams in all of football right now. And it didn't matter today. It didn't matter. And they played a perfect game. So Cleveland should feel good about themselves with that performance. You hung with the, two-time defending AFC champions, with the team that everybody assumes is the best team in this conference and arguably in the NFL. You hung with that. So Cleveland should feel good about that. But the Chiefs just did it again, man. Like, it's hard not to expect it. Like, even when things are going bad, you just always assume Patrick Mahomes is going to do something like this. It's a habit now. It completely revamped and re-energized the entire team for the rest of the game, that one play. And that's why he's just so insane. Like, things cannot be going the Chiefs' way for 75% of the football game, and then Mahomes does something like that, and it turns everything around, and we just see it over and over and over again. It's just insane. It's hard to even explain or quantify in any reasonable fashion.
Well, yeah, I think you saw that the Browns came out today. There's a difference between faith and expectation in your team, and the Browns came out today with a faith that they could beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs came out today with an expectation that they were going to walk away with a victory. And that only comes from having success in the NFL, I feel like, right? And so I think that you saw the defense, they stepped up. Once your leader, Patrick Mahomes, everybody feeds off of Patrick Mahomes' energy, right? And throughout the entire game, you had that consistency from Patrick Mahomes where every single time that he was on the field, he was just throwing shots. Those arm angles that he was throwing passes from are just unreal, right? Like I feel like every single week he does something that amazes me even more, right? And I think at this point, you start to take him for granted a little bit, but we need to take a moment and just understand that we have the best quarterback on the face of the planet right now. And as long as we have him on our team, we're never out of a game because he's going to do something amazing. And then Chris Jones is going to see him do something amazing. He's going to look at Chris Jones and say, all right, now it's your turn. Get out there and do something. And Chris Jones is going to step up, or Tyreek Hill is going to step up. And when you have that veteran leadership that has that expectation to win and not that faith that they're going to win, right? And there's no moral victories in the NFL, but the Browns should walk out here with their head held high. They came in with a great game plan. They took a shot at the AFC champs. They did their best. And honestly, I don't want to see them again this year. I mean, they're a really good team. I don't want to see the Browns again. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a fun game to watch. But I can think of a few other teams I'd rather see in the playoffs than the Browns again. I mean, to be honest. But, when you got Patrick Mahomes, you always have a leg up.
Yeah, and Tyreek Hill is just insane. Like what a week one performance from Tyreek Hill. I think he had 96 yards in the first half. Obviously, the huge 75-yard touchdown. He was just absolutely lights out. And going against a talented Browns secondary, him and Travis Kelce are just on a completely different level. Like, that's why the Chiefs offense is just so good. And it's hard not to fall in love with what those guys do because they're incredible. Like, we're looking at, in my opinion, like 3 Hall of Fame caliber players playing their primes all at the same time for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they make it look easy. That's just why the Chiefs' talent, their top premier talent, those 3 guys, is just better than any other trio in the NFL. And I don't really know where the argument's at for another 3 players at the top of your roster who are better than Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, or Patrick Mahomes. Like, they're just absolutely insane. And for how special they were, we do have to talk about the rest of the offense, though. McCole Hardman, kind of quiet, little absent in this game. Clyde was a little bit more involved. I love seeing Clyde involved in the passing game, but you still got some question marks about Clyde and what you expect from him moving forward this season. If you are expecting a huge jump in year 2 of his NFL career, which I am. I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he's a talented player with the revamped offensive line. Like, you expect the Chiefs running game to be better. That being said, the Cleveland Browns run defense is one of the best run defenses in the NFL over the second half of last year. And that defensive line's better this season. That whole defense in general is better this season. And I expected that defense to give the Chiefs some problems, and they were early in the game. But like we said, it caught up to them, right? Like, the Chiefs always catch up to you. And that's just a testament to how incredible and historic they are offensively. Like, it's just hard for me to think of another team in the NFL that has Mahomes, Hill, and Kelsey, and they can beat you at any time, and there's just nothing you can do to stop them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that also, everybody knows that Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the NFL, but that's not what makes him special. That's not what makes him Tyreek Hill. It's the little things he does. It's when a player jumps off sides that he knows to break it deep that some of the other wide receivers on this roster might not do. Mecole Hardman tried to cut one across the middle early in the game when they jumped off sides. If he just would have hit the seam and gone deep, Mahomes could have maybe hit him for 6. And it's a free play, right? Tyreek Hill knows to take those free plays. Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill both, they know that if it's 3rd and 8, you just find the green grass, just find the hole in the zone, right? You don't have to be in the end zone. It's the route running. It's the little intangibles that make them at the top of the game and just put them on another upper echelon, and then, the front four for the Browns. Yeah, you give them credit. They came out and they had a game plan. And I think Mahomes did a good job in the first half of really, keeping them from pinning their ears back too much by drawing them off sides multiple times with a hard count. I think that the Browns thought, you know what, if we get drawn off sides, we're going after Mahomes regardless. We're pinning our ears back and we're going to try to put our hands on him and knock him down. And, to Mahomes' credit, he was able to take advantage of that. I think you saw that the Chiefs offense started finding more success. They had great success in the first half, but once they came out after halftime, they started mixing Clyde in a little bit more and running the ball a little bit more and getting a little bit more of a balanced offense. They were able to string together a couple long drives, which I think was crucial because it gave the defense a chance to catch their breath, right? We were able to get some points on a couple long drives, gave the defense a chance to catch their breath. They closed the gap, and then the defense was able to come out and actually make some plays, right? Because they weren't on their heels.
Yeah, and so we got a ton to get to on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. Keep the comments coming in. But right now we are actually joined by the Arrowhead Pride Editor-in-Chief himself, Pete Sweeney, from the ground at Arrowhead Stadium. Pete, what's going on? I saw you tweet that the monitors in the press box were literally shaking at Arrowhead Stadium today.
Yeah, I think this game, in my opinion, was a microcosm of what we're beginning to expect here as people who cover this team. And I listened to someone at halftime, and I said to them, look, watch what they're about to do here. We've been here so many times where it seems like the game is over and they're playing really poorly, and then all of a sudden something happens. And I think it's that part of the franchise's history where you got to really start to think, okay, these good things are happening for your team. This feels like very much the Tom Brady Patriots, where something seems like it's always going to go right for your team, and you got it today. They seemed dead in the water, not only at the halftime, in my opinion, but when Kareem Hunt scored to make it 29-20, it felt like Kareem Hunt's day, and I think that all changed, obviously, very quickly. And yes, when the punt was bobbled, it was shaking in the press box, and you could just tell that the environment was something special today, a return to the full capacity for Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah, just absolutely incredible scene at Arrowhead Stadium. Pete, I know you got to get down to the press conferences, so we don't want to keep you too long. Thank you for joining us on the Rapid Reaction Show. We'll talk to you in a little bit, Sweeney. It's just, it's hard to explain how good they've been and how you just don't see teams that can continue to do this on the level that they continue to do it, but they do. And I was talking about this during the Thursday night game with the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Dallas head coach Mike McCarthy decided to go for 2 field goals at opportune times in that game instead of going for touchdowns. And that's just not how you beat a guy like Tom Brady. That's not how you beat a guy like Patrick Mahomes. It's the same circumstance like Pete just mentioned, you just can't go for field goals against them. And to the Browns' credit, they absolutely did not do that. They did everything that they needed to do to step up and win this football game. The Chiefs just said, yeah, we're the Chiefs, baby. Like that's just not how we lose football games. Not at Arrowhead, not at a full capacity Arrowhead crowd, and not opening week of the NFL season. We're not losing at home. I do want to talk about the offensive line a little bit here. So the Browns pass rush, obviously Myles Garrett, very, very talented player, one of the best pass rushers in all of football. And they do have a good defensive line, adding Jadeveon Clowney, and we'll see what they get from him. He's had a lot of injury problems so far in his NFL career, so hasn't necessarily lived up to his draft stock, but still a talented player by all accounts. And then they've got Malik Jackson, Malik McDowell, other talented interior players that were giving the Chiefs some problems. I think overall you have to like what you saw from the Chiefs offensive line. There was some miscues, but I talked about that a lot, Rocky. You can't expect them to look like the best offensive line in football in week one. Like it takes a long time for offensive lines to gel and kind of find that rhythm and know you can rely on the guy next to you, that he's going to do his job. And so I think overall you should feel strong about the Chiefs offensive line performance going against a very talented pass rush and for the most part, keeping Mahomes upright and, giving him an opportunity to make those kinds of plays that make him so special. They're going to get better. Like I'm not coming away from this thing completely wowed by the Chiefs offensive line, but I'm not coming out of it saying, we got a problem in Orlando Brown. We got a problem in Lucas Niang. Like, I don't think you can say that from this game. Going against one of the most talented teams in the NFL, I feel like they held up pretty well in week one, considering the circumstances.
I mean, in the AFC, who has a better front four than the Cleveland Browns right now? I mean, they're deep, they're talented, they're athletic, they're mean, they got swagger. And I wrote in my article earlier this week that this was going to be the perfect litmus test for this offensive line, right? Because you might not go against a better front four for the rest of the season. And there's going to be lumps and there's going to be brutal moments. Like you said, there's going to be miscues. But I thought for having three rookies starting their first game, because for all intents and purposes, Lucas Niang opted out last year. He's a rookie. I think for having three people playing their first game in the NFL, that they look great. I mean, there's miscues. There's going to be rookie moments. There's going to be, Orlando Brown's coming in an entirely different system. Joe Thuney's never played in this system before either, right? This is all, a work in progress, and great things aren't built overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. There's going to be miscues and lumps. But that being said, going against an extremely talented front four in Cleveland, they held their own. And when the game was on the line, Hilaire was able to run the ball. Mahomes got the passes off. There was a pocket for Mahomes to work in when he needed it, And so, ugly moments, you take those out, the game film looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I think they've got a tough test in week 2. Chiefs got a Sunday Night Football matchup against the Baltimore Ravens next week. We'll kind of see what they look like tomorrow night against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Ravens are dealing with just an insane amount of early season injuries. I think there's some question marks on that offense with, Sammy Watkins and Hollywood Brown being healthy. Rashad Bateman, their rookie wide receiver, is on IR. Lost Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. And so we'll kind of see what the Ravens look like tomorrow night against the Raiders. But they do have a nice pass rush, so that could be another strong test for the Chiefs to open the season and see how the offensive line looks. But I don't think you could come away from this game being disappointed in the performance of the offensive line. I think you have to feel strong about that because it's going to take them some time to figure this thing out and to gel and to really become a unit. Like we see that across the NFL all the time. So I think that's just something that you got to kind of wait and see on. I think you should feel strong about how they look today. Now, the Chiefs defense is another story. There's reason to be concerned, right?
There's reason to be concerned.
There's some reason to be concerned. Obviously, Tyrann Mathieu not in this game. That's the biggest factor, in my opinion. Tyrann Mathieu is the most important player on this Chiefs defense outside of Chris Jones, in my opinion. and he directs the traffic in that secondary. He is so good. He makes all of the other guys look better. And really, no one in the secondary stood out in a meaningful way today. I know Juan Thornhill came up big. Juan Thornhill had a good second half. I will say that. He showed his athleticism. He had that fumble. Like, Juan Thornhill wound up coming up, making big plays. And then Mike Hughes did have the interception to end the football game, which was a big play. I think that was more on Baker than it was on Hughes personally. Baker just made a bad toss when he was going to the ground. But there's reasons to be a little bit concerned about the Chiefs defense. Like, we were concerned about this Chiefs secondary headed into the year. And a lot of us thought they could use more depth at cornerback. They could add another cornerback, another veteran guy. And then they brought in Mike Hughes, and Mike Hughes is the third cornerback, but he had some struggles in the first half. The Browns early on, rookie wide receiver Anthony Shorts, he's a wide receiver that I actually like. I think he's a talented player, extremely fast, like a 4.25 type of guy, huge explosive wide receiver. And he was burning Mike Hughes early in that game. The Browns didn't wind up going back to him much, but I think he's going to be a good player for them later on down the year. I don't think Mike Hughes was like a liability. And obviously he came up with the game sealing interception, but there's reason to be a little bit concerned about this Chiefs secondary. You would hope that even with no Tyrann Mathieu, this unit for the most part has been together for years now, right? Like, even L'Jarius Sneed only headed into year number 2, but you would hope there's a little bit more continuity and that they would gel a little bit better in week 1 of the NFL season. And obviously you get better as you get used to the grind of the NFL calendar year, but you want to see more from that, right? Like, we're expecting L'Jarius Sneed to be, and maybe our expectations of L'Jarius Sneed are unfair, and I thought he played fine today, but we're expecting him to be like, when Tyrann Mathieu's out of the game, it was like, okay, you need to see Sneed make those plays that Tyrann Mathieu does. And I think having Tyrann Mathieu back is going to allow L'Jarius Sneed to make significant plays at some point, but it's totally reasonable to be a little bit concerned with that secondary's performance today against the Browns.
Yeah, I think I messaged you about halfway through the game, and I said, if I'm Tyrann Mathieu's agent, I'm sending this game film to Brett Veach, because Tyrann Mathieu is indispensable to this defense. He's a dynamic playmaker, and when he's out of the game, there isn't anybody really to step in to fill that role. L'Jarius Sneed, to his credit, stepped in and tried to do it, and he did play fine, but there was a couple of times where he was in the backfield, but he just couldn't make the tackle. You couldn't bring down Nick Chubb. He got shook off. Those are plays that Matthew's at least usually able to hold on until help comes. Nick Chubb's a hard guy to bring down, but those are the plays that Mathieu usually makes. He's the guy making the calls on the defense, making sure people are lined up. Anthony Hitchens does a lot of that too, but there's also that missing swagger. There's that kingdom landlord mentality that's just 100% missing off the field when Matthew's not in the game. And talking about Mike Hughes, I mean, yeah, you mentioned the Schwartz, passes, but they also went to him on a critical third down to David Njoku too. It almost seemed like that first drive they knew where to look. They knew this guy was new. They knew that they could kind of have some success against him. To his credit, Mike Hughes had a short memory today. What you have to do if you're going to be successful as a defensive back in this league. And when the game was on the line, he made a play. I think the same thing for Juan Thornhill. Early in the game, he didn't look good. But then he comes up and he punches the ball out. We just need some consistency there from some of these guys, and then if Matthew's going to be – we just got to hope Matthew stays healthy this year, because if we don't have him on the field, then our defense is in trouble. That's just what it is. I mean, Chris Jones is a difference maker, but he's a pass rusher, and he's going to pin his ears back and go after the quarterback. But on the second level, you got to have somebody else there who's going to be able to go sideline to sideline and make a dynamic play.
And I want to get to this comment from our guy, Steve. He says, Honey Badger and Willie Gay out made a difference. Hope to have them back next week. DeAndre Baker, I think DeAndre Baker was a healthy scratch, so I think they chose not to play him. And obviously Nick Bolton is a rookie. Willie Gay's on IR, so he's going to be out at least the first 3 weeks of the season. But I do want to mention Willie Gay there, because I know you mentioned him briefly, Rocky. Willie Gay can be a difference maker for this team, right? And Anthony Hitchens, we've kind of made light of Anthony Hitchens best shape of his life. He's looking lean. He's looking fleet of foot this year. He's flying around in the preseason. And Anthony Hitchens is a very important player for this Chiefs defense. But all training camp, Willie Gay was a guy that they continued to talk about. Coaches continue to talk about, media continue to talk about him showing up and making plays over and over and over again. And that athleticism is something the Chiefs linebacker core has been missing for a long time. And I liked what I saw from Nick Bolton, especially early in the game, where he kept showing up and you kept seeing him make plays, but he's still a rookie and he's still figuring things out. Nick Bolton would not be in there right now, in my opinion, if it was not for the Willie Gay injury. I think Ben Neiman would still be a starting linebacker for this Chiefs team because Spags just doesn't really like starting rookies that much. He's made that clear over the past couple of years. And so you have to be excited about what you saw from Nick Bolton in a high round draft pick that the Chiefs invested in. But yeah, I don't think you can make judgments on this Chiefs defense until we see what they look like with Willie Gay in there. Obviously, they need Tyrann Mathieu back. Obviously, they need Frank Clark back. And I think Willie Gay can be a serious impact playmaker for them because they haven't had that kind of athleticism at that position since like prime Derek Johnson days.
Yeah, no, 100%. They need that Derek Johnson, Donnie Edwards type of player out there on the field, I feel like, at the linebacker position. I mean, if you roll out a starting lineup of Ben Neiman, Nick Bolton, and Anthony Hitchens, those are some solid players. I mean, with Anthony Hitchens and Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton's a very solid player. He's just not the athlete that Willie Gay is. And if you roll those three out there as your starting linebackers, you know going into it that you're missing an aspect of athleticism. They're just not as fast as some players in the NFL. I mean, they're smart. They're good tacklers. They can diagnose the play. They're gap sound. They're everything else you want in a football player. But when you think of those football players, you don't think outstanding athlete. I mean, it's just as simple as it can be. But Willie Gay, on the other hand, he's still coming along and he's learning things. But man, he pops on film, And so not having him on the field, I think you can have Ben Neiman and Nick Bolton on the field. You can have Hitchens and Ben Neiman. You can have Bolton and Hitchens. As long as you have Gay on the field, you're fine because you need that aspect of athleticism.
Yeah, and the Chiefs have been missing that for a long time. Another guy that I want to discuss and kind of get your take on him is Jarran Reid. So he was a guy we've talked about a lot, that Jarran Reid is going to be a significant impact player in the run game for the Chiefs. He's going to clog up the middle and really allow Chris Jones to bump outside and be that kind of pass rusher that we want him to be. Pete Sweeney has said that Chris Jones is going to set the sack record, and he got 2 today to, get off on a good foot in his route to try to break that record. I just didn't feel like I heard Jarran Reid's name called much in this game, and they need him to be an impact player for them up front, in my opinion. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that because I know Jarran Reid's not exactly like a superstar caliber player, and I think he's a really good NFL player. He's had some really good years in the league. I was just kind of expecting more, I guess, in his debut performance with the Chiefs because of Chris Jones and because of the other guys that I had faith in along that defensive line. Mike Dana getting thrust into a starting role because Frank Clark isn't the best situation for him to be in. But Jarran Reid is a starter on this defense. And so you expect him to make plays. And, when his name is called, you expect to hear it in a regular season NFL game. And I just did not hear that much from Jarran Reid.
No, and I think that, yes, to your point, you didn't hear a lot from Jarran Reid today. And in the second half, I felt like he disappeared a little bit. I think early in the game, he was getting some penetration, but there was no outside containment by the edge, and the runs were getting bounced outside. I think that the linebackers weren't coming in and filling in the gaps. And so you would have Jarran Reid sometimes getting penetration in the pocket, but then he gets, he's pushing the running back, bouncing them outside a little bit to the tackle, and there's just nobody there because, the defensive end has gotten pushed off the ball and sealed off, and then the run goes for 7 yards. So that looks like Jarran Reid, didn't show up. But then at the same time, when they went up the middle, he wasn't there. So I feel like it wasn't a horrible outing by Jarran Reid, but it wasn't as good as we were expecting or from what we've seen in the preseason, So I think that there's definitely a room for him to step up and improve, but I don't think that it was. I can think of other players on the defense who had worse days than Jarran Reid.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's an overestimation of what we saw from them in the preseason. And obviously, you shouldn't read too much into what's going on in the preseason, as was apparent today. But their defensive line looks dominant in the preseason. So it was hard not to get kind of caught up in that. And obviously, they came up with big plays down the stretch. Baker Mayfield's game-sealing interception was because the pocket was collapsing around him, and Baker tried to make a play that Baker just shouldn't try to make. And that led to Mike Hughes grabbing that game-sealing interception. I don't know, it's just week 1. We've got a long season ahead of us, 17 regular season games. There's no reason to jump to conclusions about this defense, especially when we know they aren't anywhere near 100%. And Tyrann Mathieu, it's not like he's dealing with a significant injury, although, I don't want to speculate how he's been affected by testing positive for COVID and all of that stuff. He was out there today. He got cleared to play. Chiefs decided he's missed too much practice. We don't want to risk it with him. He's too important to the defense. We're going to rest him this week and make sure he's good to go for Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. But this defense kind of feels like we're going to see some growing pains here early in the year while they try to get healthy. And that's something that we're just going to have to deal with. But is it really any different from what Chiefs fans have gone through the last few years, where it's just, you just need the defense to not be the reason that you lose games? And today it almost was for a little while. For that first half, it looked like it was going to be the reason that they lost this football game, because the Browns were just moving the ball at will against them. Kevin Stefanski was brilliant in the first half of this game. So I don't think you should be concerned about the Chiefs defense just yet. I just don't think that it's changed, really. It's Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, Andy Reid. That offense is what's going to win you championships. You just need the defense to not be the reason that you're losing football games.
Yeah, I think there were times today where Baker Mayfield looked as comfortable as any quarterback could ever look, back there in the pocket. He just had a flat line in front of him, and he had all day to throw. And, that's not good enough. We know that. Like you said, though, we're not at full strength. We haven't seen the Chiefs defense yet. And so because we haven't seen it full strength, it is still too early. Maybe they're not the top 10 defense that we boasted they were when we saw our backups beating other teams' backups, right? In preseason. But that being said, yeah, it's a long season, man. And I don't think we're as bad as our 2019 defense, where we're like, just get one stop and we could win this game, right? This isn't the no punt game with the Colts.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, Rocky, but Andy Reid is actually live at the podium right now. So let's go ahead and head out there and hear what the Chiefs head coach has to say.
A nice game plan. Made a couple tweaks that's for the second half, and with the run game part of it, wanting to feed 25 and get him going. I mean, and I thought that made a big difference. And then I thought Tobe had a nice package of things in for our special teams. Field position ended up being important for us down the stretch. But that time's yours.
Did you feel like early they went for the fourth down and they went for two? Did you feel like you were going to get one of those games where they were going to kind of pull out all the stops?
Yeah, they're one of the lead teams in the year with fourth down. So, and we normally do that thing. I chose on the 4th and 2 to kick it, but I just thought at that time we need to do that right there. So, but they've that. I mean, how the games are going to be. I mean, they were measuring us against them, and we were kind of doing the same. I mean, this first game, so we knew they were a good football team, and our guys, really pressed through, and it was warm out there too. And I gave Barry a little credit after the game with our guys, Barry Rubin. Just our guys were in good shape, and it showed that fourth quarter.
We talked about it during the offseason. The rookies started. How would you grade it? How do you think the performance was holding up against this front seven?
Yeah. So listen, that's a good front seven. So I thought they held their own and really did a nice job. I mean, to get the run game going like that against that crew, I thought was big. We had the one sack at the end that kind of, but that shouldn't ruin the rest of what they did. I mean, I was pretty impressed. Now, Yang he probably had the toughest job of all of them. And he bear down and pushed through. And I mean, these are young guys now, young guys in there, and against veteran group alignment, so defensive linemen. So yeah, just keep growing. Let's just keep growing. We're not going to rest on this. We got to get better. There were too many mistakes. We had holding penalties, procedure penalties. We got to get better. So we'll hammer that. For right now, we're going to enjoy it because it was a tough one. And these wins are hard to get in this league, so we're going to enjoy this one. But we'll get back and make sure we grind through some of the things we need to get better at.
Andy, talked to Chris Jones earlier. What was it about him kind of getting that zone where he sort of took over the game as you said?
Yeah, just listen. I think it was just a mindset that something's got to come up here and take over. He was one of the captains today, so he takes a lot of pride in where he's come from with this organization, and he's not the young buck anymore. He's a guy, right? So he's there, one of the veteran players, and he showed great leadership with that and fired everybody up.
How many games you played like this last year? I know it's a new year. That's a roster turnover. Does that factor in at all to getting into a situation?
I don't know. I mean, that get too old for these, huh?
Coach, you mentioned the heat. You come out there at the beginning of the second half and had a long drive. So your defense really off the field for about half an hour. And then Chris and Jenner, I noticed they were rotating out.
Yeah.
Last Cleveland drive. How much of just keeping them fresh for the whole quarter?
Yeah, I thought Brendan did a nice job with that. He had a great rotation going there, inside and outside guys. So I think that helps you. We did the same thing with Kels, kind of rotated him on the offensive side and rotated the backs. And so that stuff helps down as you go. Receivers always do it, but that stuff helps, especially early in the season like this when it's, has a tendency to be a little bit warm.
It seemed like your offense was consistent throughout the game. The defense just needs to get going somehow. You mentioned adjustments by Spagnuolo and half. A little bit light on what those were and what that.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go into what I'll let him do that. I don't want to give anything away, but he did have some nice adjustments for the pass game part of it. Third down was really the hammering point. We weren't doing very well on third down and in the first half, and he added a couple little things there. So I would tell you that was probably the biggest part of it.
And with the way Tyreek played today, just remarkable. I think seems to continue to get better. And was there anything that you guys did differently with him today versus January?
They're a little different coverage than we saw there. So we did a couple different things, but than maybe what we did in the Super Bowl or last time with them. Were you asking about last time or our last game? Last game against them? Yeah. So last game against them, there were some similar things. There were some things that we changed up. Yeah, give them a couple, little wrinkles there.
Coach, you mentioned the fans and the atmosphere. How much did this feel like the playoff game?
Yeah, listen, it was loud down there. I mean, very, very loud. I mean, you guys were there, So I mean, it was that kind of atmosphere, and I think you watched all the college games. And you felt that you kind of Arrowhead's loud anyways, but now you load this thing up and you said you can't come here for a year, and you just open the gates and here they are.
Andy, you talked about needing to get that run game going. Was it something last year? What was there that let you know that?
Yeah, I didn't like the balance that we had going the way it was working out. So I thought, with the coverages they were playing, that it would help to run it just a little bit.
Coach, back here, how big was that 75-yard play? It seemed like it turned everything around, woke the fans up, woke your team up.
Yeah, no, that was big. I mean, to be able to sustain a drive like that and then score, especially to start a half, I mean, that's the second half. I mean, that's a positive thing. Gotten something accomplished in there, and gives the guys confidence that we can move the ball better than what we were doing.
Well, I was talking about the one play, 75-yard pass play to Tyreek.
Yeah, that was nice too. Yeah, that was nice.
Andy, obviously you've had a lot of great teams and great players before you have Patrick, but I just wonder, I think it's 10 times now that he's brought you back from two score deficits, and just how much different is it to know you always have that, even when it looks a little dire?
Yeah, well, you love his attitude because he always feels like, we're in it. And he does such a great job with the guys around him. He's a great communicator. I mean, you guys know this when you talk to him. So, but a great communicator during tough times on the sideline. So we can sit there and we can talk, and I can kind of feel where his mind's going with things, and that helps. That's important, especially in a game like this.
Does it put you at ease in a different way?
I don't know, it puts me at ease, but I enjoy that part of it. Yeah, I think that's a real positive trait that he has.
You mentioned the crowd a couple times now, but I'm also wondering the way that you guys are able to score like the 75-yard with Tyreek and just these big plays. I just wonder if that it can sort of amplify those big moments and turn momentum quicker than it might have sort of plotting.
Yeah, you kind of felt that. You felt it with the defensive stand. You felt it with the Tyreek's touchdown there. I mean, what a great job he did getting open on that, just coming back to the ball, and Pat running full speed to make that throw back across there. I mean, something. And how many times have we seen that? It's pretty spectacular. But having the fans part of that is great. And here at GEHA Stadium, Arrowhead, all right, make sure you put that in there so I don't get in trouble. Listen, I mean, that's it doesn't take much to get everybody fired up, and those kind of things sure help.
Maybe what happened between Greg Lewis and their safety there?
Yeah, so the fellow that was involved with it came over and he was on the chest of our player. I mean, that's what happened, right? So he was trying to get him off, and he didn't want to get off, and so he kind of lifted him just a little bit, and then he got hit back, or he got hit, and but he was there to help get that fella who was leaning on our guy. That's why there was a penalty, right? So the officials fixed it, which I thought was important. And, you don't do that on our sideline. You don't do that to our guys. I mean, bottom line. So.
Getting there, right.
That was Chiefs head coach Andy
critical
Reid speaking with the media after the Chiefs' big win over the Cleveland Browns in week 1 of the NFL season. I'm Steven Serda, joined by my guy Rocky Magana on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. Obviously, Chiefs pick up a huge win week 1 of the NFL season against the team, in my opinion, that's the second best team in the AFC in the Cleveland Browns. And I did correctly predict, by the way, that the Pittsburgh Steelers would beat the Buffalo Bills earlier today. The Bills did not look very good in that football game, but fantastic game today for the Kansas City Chiefs. Highs and lows, ups and downs, but it's hard to not feel good after the way the Chiefs came back and won that football game. It just impressive showing by Patrick Mahomes, by the best football player on the planet, right, Rocky? Like that's kind of just what the Browns played a perfect game until Patrick Mahomes said, all right, I'm done with this. I don't want to play this game anymore. We gotta end this thing.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes threw for 337, 3 TDs, and then rushed another one in. He does what he wants at will, with opposing defenses. If he's under duress, he finds a way to, change his arm angle, and make the completion. Tyreek went off for 197, on 11 receptions. I mean, that's a monster day for Tyreek Hill, and he was there every single time Mahomes needed him. Interesting in Andy Reid's presser. I don't think I've ever seen him so fired up as talking about that incident on the sideline there between Harrison Jr. and Lewis. He seemed like he was happy that the officials made it right, but at the same time, you could tell that he was he was pretty fired up about it.
Yeah, and Andy Reid, I guess we didn't mention that yet. It was such an eventful game. I almost forgot there was a player ejected in the first quarter of the game for shoving Greg Lewis. It was an incident on the sideline between Brown safety Ronnie Harrison and Chiefs coach Greg Lewis. It appeared that Harrison was kind of standing on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He tried to get him off. Harrison immediately pushed back on Greg Lewis. There was a lot of blowback on Twitter over that, obviously. I don't think that, you shouldn't touch a player on the football field when you're a coach on the sideline, but at the same time, you can't push a coach. Like, you just can't. I'm totally fine with the ejection. Like, I think it was totally warranted, and I don't think there was any reason to dispute it or argue about it.
No, I mean, you're an NFL athlete, and you're a big human being, and with that comes certain responsibilities and two things you can't do as an NFL player. And this is you can't ever put your hands on a referee, and you can't put your hands on a coach, especially an opposing team's coach. I mean, those two things right there are going to get you nailed without a doubt, no matter what. If it was another Chiefs player, it may have been a little bit different, but under no circumstances can you go to the opposing team's sideline and put your hands on one of their coaches. I mean, it should go without saying. It obviously didn't. It happened, and obviously the refs came back and they made the right call, and they made the right decision, and it all got taken care of.
Yeah, and I do want to mention before we get out of here, because I know it's very important to Chiefs fans, Patrick Mahomes is still undefeated in the month of September. Mm-hmm. He's still yet to throw an interception, which is, I think, even more remarkable than having never lost a game in your career in the month of September. That's absolutely insane. Final thoughts before we get out of here, Rocky, on the Chiefs' big win, overall performance, and how you're going to feel about them headed into next week on Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens.
I think, it's a brutal start to the season, but it wasn't the first half that we wanted, but we really pulled it out in the end. And the Chiefs start hot every single year, it seems like, thanks to Patrick Mahomes being amazing in September, and never losing in September. It was a little bit closer than a lot of us would like it to be. But, that made for a great game, and it made for a really good watching experience. There's some things they got to clean up on defense, but we got to get healthy on defense too. I think if Matthew can go next week, it's a totally different look. But that remains to be seen, kind of where he's at. The pass rush has to be better. The coverage has to be better. There has to be more pass breakups. There was a lot of good coverage where Baker Mayfield made a great throw and Jarvis Landry came down with it. Jarvis Landry's an amazing wide receiver. He's great. But at the same time, you got to break up more of those.
Yeah, and for the Chiefs offense, at some point throughout this season, we already mentioned how long of a season it is, and things can change really quick in the NFL. So you can't jump to conclusions in week one. Every year we see a team have a bad performance or look lackluster in the opening game of the season, and it's a completely different story when we look 3 months down the line. Obviously, the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the NFL, but I still really want to see a consistent pass catcher step up outside of Travis Kelce, outside of Tyreek Hill. Now, no one on this team is going to ever surpass those guys as offensive weapons because of just how incredible they are and the caliber of player that they are as individuals. But you need another guy. Like Sammy Watkins was never going to give you 1,000 yards or anything like that. But you just need a guy who can make a big catch for you when you need him to, who can, give you a consistent 500 to 600 yards as a third passing option. And I don't feel like they have that right now. McCole Hardman is a talented player, and I love his explosiveness and all of that. I just haven't seen anything from him yet so far in his career that makes me believe he is going to be a consistent all-around wide receiver at some point who can do the things that Sammy Watkins did when he was healthy for this Chiefs team. So I'm concerned about that. I'd really like to see that kind of get figured out as the season goes on. I do think it's an important and underrated component of this offense. Like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce can always give you that spark and always put you over the top, but you just need another guy that you can rely on, that he's just going to be there when you need him to be there on a big third down or something like that. And obviously getting Tyrann Mathieu back is going to change the secondary. I still have faith that L'Jarius Sneed's going to be an extremely talented player, that Charvarius Ward can be a solid and consistent player. And maybe we'll see a little bit more out of Mike Hughes. We don't know. He came up with a big interception, but Tyrann Mathieu is going to change this secondary when he comes back for this Chiefs football team. And I think they need to get Willie Gay back in a hurry. One, because I just want to see him play for the Chiefs. Like, all we heard last season, and in the limited time that he did play, we saw how much more explosive he was than any other linebacker that they had on the roster. All of the reports in training camp, everything that we saw in the preseason, like, Willie Gay looked every bit as athletic as any linebacker that they had on the team. And they just don't have that type of explosive playmaker in that position group right now. And I would love to see him get back and get healthy within, the next 3 weeks, whenever he can get off of IR, if hopefully it's only going to be a 3 week stint on IR. And I think he can be a legitimate game changer for this defense once he gets in there, because they don't have a guy who I trust to fly sideline to sideline in that group at all right now.
No, not at all. They don't. We got to see him back on the field, and we got to hope he stays healthy. Like, that's the thing, is you see a lot of guys who are talented, and they just can't stay on the field. Here's knocking on wood that Willie Gay is not one of those guys, because if he's healthy and he's on the field, then this linebacking unit looks completely different. We need him to be on the field. And in the same token, we need Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to stay on the field this year too. We can't afford a collarbone injury to Tyreek Hill this year, I don't think, because like you said, there's nobody else in that number 2 receiver role that we really trust, to make the play when the game's on the line. Now, when Tyreek Hill was out last time, our wide receiving group wasn't that much better than what it is right now, and Mahomes was still found a lot of success, But that being said, I'll sleep a lot better at night if Tyreek Hill's in the lineup and Travis Kelce's in the lineup. And I think that the offensive line looked good today, but we got to run the ball better. I'm not concerned that Edwards-Helaire only had 14 carries. I'm concerned that he, didn't even average 3.5 yards a carry. It came in I think about 3.1 yards a carry for the game. In the NFL, that's not good enough. You got to be able to get yards on the ground when you need them, and you got to be able to have a decent average. Otherwise, we're going to run into the same problems we had last year on offense.
Absolutely, undoubtedly room for improvement headed into the season, but it's a Chiefs win. Chiefs big win against a very, very talented Cleveland Browns team. So let's celebrate Kansas City. First big win, off to a 1-0 start as the Chiefs head towards hopefully another Super Bowl appearance with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the Arrowhead Pride Reaction Show. We do ask that you follow us on Twitter at Arrowhead Pride. You can follow Rocky at Rocky Magana. I'm at Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. And we ask that you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing at the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. We've got stuff coming out 7 days a week for you guys this football season. There's just not any other place right now where you can get Chiefs coverage the way we're doing it 7 days a week at Arrowhead Pride. So please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing. And as always, check out arrowheadpride.com. Rocky does fantastic work for us, and we've got a whole team of writers just cranking out Chiefs content all throughout the week. If you guys did not catch Andy Reid earlier in the broadcast, make sure you stay tuned after the show. We will have every single Chiefs post-game press conference on the podcast. So you're going to have to go find the podcast. You should already be subscribed to the podcast network, but if you aren't, you can go do that. Go find the podcast and listen to every single one of the Chiefs post-game press conferences. So again, big Chiefs win. Let's go celebrate Kansas City 1-0 to start the season. We'll talk to you guys next week for Sunday Night Football, Chiefs and Ravens.